Who's ready to fly on a zip line?
Placing an independent variable.
You can't kill me!
We took out the
Yes people, what's going on? It's your boy Ashton here, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today I'm going to be giving you 20 pro tips on how you can become a better Octane player in Apex Legends. Now in Season 8, we saw a bunch of changes come to Octane, which has launched him all the way to the top of the current meta, and I'm going to be teaching you how you can get the most out of your Octane plays in Apex this season and in future seasons. If you enjoyed today's video, or if you learned something new, then do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more regular Apex Legends content from myself. So to start off, we're going to go over a few of the broader tips for all Octane players, including new Octane players, before we get into a few more specific and situational tips. So the first tip I've got for you guys, if you're going to be playing Octane, is of course to be playing aggressive. Now obviously the whole point of Octane's kit is to allow him to move around faster and get in and out of fights as quickly as possible, and with his 40% increased sprint speed while stimmed, that is exactly what he is good at. As the Octane on the team, it's your job to go in and initiate fights, do as much damage as you can, and potentially get a few knocks as well. Octane is really good at pushing into fights because of his stim ability, but also getting out of fights if things get a little bit too hairy. So with that being said, if you're playing Octane, you definitely don't want to be using sniper rifles and long range weapons. You want to be going into the enemy's faces with SMGs, shotguns and assault rifles, as that is where his abilities are going to come in strongest for you. Having said that, the second tip of the video is to try and avoid doing dumb pushes as Octane. This is something I see a lot of new players fall into the trap of doing because they get so comfortable that they're Octane and they can run around super fast all the time. They'll just run in and push everything. Now as previously mentioned, Octane's strengths are in the fact that he can push fights and be aggressive, but that doesn't mean you have to do it brainlessly. That means the first time you see enemies, you don't just have to stim at them and pad at them and just jump on them instantly. You can still use your game sense to approach the fight in a smart way. Octane is a character that gets his abilities back really quickly, but that doesn't mean you have to use them at every given chance. You can still use them effectively and smartly without spamming them all the time. Now whilst we're on the topic of using his abilities all the time, in the middle of fights sometimes it can be tempting to use Octane's stim to reposition around a corner or just to give you that speed increase to try and help you win the fight. But guys, sometimes this can actually impact you negatively rather than positively, because in those tight moments where you're both like 50 HP, every last bit of HP counts, and taking away 12 HP with a stim can actually make the difference between winning that fight and losing the fight. Octane is lucky enough to have one of these smaller hitboxes in Apex, so you don't necessarily have to stim to be hard to hit for the enemy. In these tight situations, I would recommend not stimming and just trying to outgun your opponent. With the changes that came to Octane's jump pad at the start of Season 8, we've seen a ton more Octanes being used in ranked and in pubs to help the entire team rotate a lot faster, and this tip is based around using the jump pad to help your team rotate. You should always, even in pubs, consider where your teammates are and how they can benefit from using your jump pad, because most people will take a jump pad if they see one, and making an effort to make your jump pads accessible for your teammates can make the difference in winning or losing a fight. If you want your team to push with you, then throwing a jump pad near them is the best way to encourage them to do that. Whereas if you're running around solo and stimming ahead and using the jump pad for yourself, your teammates are probably less likely to follow up with what you're doing. Now another thing to consider whilst playing Octane is that he does have passive healing to his health pool, which means that he isn't necessarily a character that you need to carry a lot of syringes with. It's always good to carry at least 4 syringes regardless, just in case of emergencies, or if teammates need them, you can drop them for them. But I'd always say prioritize carrying shield cells over syringes, because obviously Octane isn't going to be regenning his shields anytime soon. That said, you should always heal your shields first whilst playing Octane before you start healing your health, because obviously your health is going to be regenerating naturally on its own, and you could avoid using a med kit and instead use a couple of syringes, as the health pool is going to regenerate whilst you're shielding up, and you may not feel the need to use a med kit. Another great trick to use on Olympus with Octane's bounce pad is of course to go in the Trident, throw a bounce pad down, launch yourself up and boost when you're up in the sky to cover a large amount of distance. You can also use this to jump above teams and jump out of the Trident on top of their heads without them knowing. A trick that not a lot of people use with Octane's jump pad is to use it to bounce backwards in the direction that you've just hit the pad from. What I mean by this is if you run at a jump pad, punch at it and pull backwards on the analog stick or press S key on PC, then you are going to fire backwards in the direction that you just hit the bounce pad from, and this can be really useful for repositioning or just bamboozling your enemies. Now when you walk into a jump pad, you're going to get the most height out of the jump pad, and when you slide into it, you're going to get the most distance, but also an added bonus of sliding into bounce pads is that you get 100% accuracy on your gun whilst flying through the sky, so you can do some pretty cool flybys on enemies if you've got good accuracy. Another interesting way to use the jump pad is to use it to jump into walls that you then bounce off of to another position. Now, I know this is quite hard to comprehend, but you can see what I mean on screen here in Cage, where I use the jump pad to jump into the wall that I then bounce off of up to the mid-level of Cage. One of the best movement mechanics for aggressive characters in Apex Legends is obviously the wall bounce, and it's quite an easy one to learn for anyone who hasn't learnt it already. One of the problems that people find commonly with wall bouncing is that it's hard to get the momentum needed to effectively wall bounce, especially in stressful situations where you want to do it very quickly, and with Octane that problem is negated because obviously when you stim, he's going to be at full speed very quickly and it's much easier to slide, avoid those dead slides, and you're going to get a nice wall bounce off quickly, and this can really help in combat situations to get wall bounces off and outplay enemies. A useful tip to do as Octane whilst you're using a Phoenix kit is to stim right at the end before you pop the Phoenix kit, because that way you're going to have a full health pool of full shields and full health, and you're going to have the stim effect as well for the longest period of time. Another utility for the bounce pad that a lot of people often forget is that you can use it to help get knocked teammates out of sticky situations. Just by throwing the jump pad at the knocked guy's feet, it's going to be easy for them to bounce out of the way and get to a safer position to be rezzed. When you're playing Octane, it may be more beneficial to you to use a gold shield over a red shield because you're going to be carrying more shield cells than syringes if you're playing Octane, and he has less need for syringes in general. But even if you do have to pop a syringe with a gold shield as Octane, usually you only have to pop one as his health pool regen is pretty fast, and usually you don't need to use two in the time that it takes to heal him up. I really recommend you guys try this one as Octane with gold shield heals really fast. Another really great tip for healing with Octane is to bunny hop whilst healing. This is something that other legends simply cannot do. If you pop a stim before you start healing with Octane and start bunny hopping, you're going to be able to bunny hop heal, and this is going to be really helpful in stressful situations to help get you into cover whilst also healing at the same time. Now, a lot of you may already know that Octane Stim allows him to avoid stun effects from caustic gas and airstrikes, but it can also be used to allow him to avoid Horizon's black hole as well. I would say that it's more effective just to shoot the black hole ultimate than to stim out of it though, so if you're Octane, do consider just shooting the black hole instead of stimming out of it, but if you're in a situation where you have no choice, you can stim and it's going to help you get away from that black hole a little bit quicker than other legends. Another massive benefit of playing Octane aggressively is that when you stim, you're going to have increased strafe speed compared to other legends, which is going to make you a lot harder to hit. It's going to take a little bit of practice to get used to this speed because you also have to get used to hitting your shots while strafing faster, but it's definitely something that you should try and learn and utilize in fights because enemies are going to have a really hard time hitting a strafing, stimming Octane. If you're standing right next to an Octane jump pad and you throw a punch into it, it's going to launch you directly up in the sky. And this can be used to help get onto high ground when you're stood right next to it and you don't necessarily want to get any distance, you just want to get some height with your jump pad. A lot of people don't consider that you can also avoid taking damage from airstrikes by using the bounce pad to jump up in the sky to avoid the explosions on the ground. Now, you may be easier for enemies to hit whilst you're up in the sky, so do be careful whilst doing this. But if you time the double jump perfectly, then you're not going to take any damage from Gibby ults or Bangalore ults. With the amount of distance the bounce pad allows you to cover now, there's a lot of unplayable ground in different maps that you can actually just bounce pad over to take shortcuts, or to go from an angle that your enemies don't necessarily expect you to approach from.
Bonus tip.
And today's bonus tip is going to be that you guys should destroy your own jump pads to avoid enemies chasing after you once you get into strong positions. The bounce pad is really good for allowing you to get into strong positions that other enemies can't necessarily play if they don't have the legend composition, but they can always take the same jump pad that you use, so you should turn around and destroy that jump pad to avoid them from doing that. But guys, that is going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you have enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section down below if there are any tips that you think I missed out, or if you learned something new from today's video, I love to hear everything you guys have to say in the comments section down below. Do remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more regular Apex Legends content from myself, but until next time guys, it's been your boy Ashton and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy and goodbye.